So it only took me like, I don't know, a month to do this review, but I'm finally done. I have finally got through Assassin's Creed Shadows. I have a ton to talk about and not just the controversial stuff because I actually feel like that's one of the least important things about this release. There's a lot of other things to get into, and we will definitely get into all of those things. But before we do that, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel grow so I can continue doing these honest reviews that is essentially coming out of my pocket, and also gives me a reason to be excited every day. There's not many, trust me. But anyway, as we move on talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows, I have to say, yes, this is a game with a ton of content. That's something I wanted to touch on very early on. If you were curious about how big the game is it bloated, all of that stuff, it's essentially the same thing as every Assassin's Creed that you've played for the last decade or so. There is an insane amount of content that I actually think is starting to become problematic, honestly. And not that it hasn't been in past years, but specifically with this one, there was a few things that really jumped out to me. And honestly, it affected the story in a lot of ways. And let's start off talking about the story, as you do start playing as Yasuke, who, yes, is incredibly controversial because he is a black samurai, which historically points out that there was a black warrior that fought for Nobunaga. And I know that the argument has been, well, but he wasn't a samurai. I don't know. And honestly, I don't know if anyone ever will know. There's pieces to say that yes and no. And ultimately, who cares? The point is he did exist around that time. He was Nobunaga's boy, and he did use a lot of samurai techniques. So there we go. But more importantly for this was the story of him. And it really was a very interesting story about loyalty and being a stranger in a strange land. And I actually did appreciate a lot of what his story told and how he got to be where he was. And some of it involved slavery, some of it just involved being a great warrior. Ultimately, Yasuke was my favorite character in this game, and not just because he is an absolute unit, which was really fun to use at some point. There is a number of hours that you spend as Noe early on, and it's fun, it's cool, it's a sneaking around kind of thing, but there's so many limitations to her and her character build that sometimes it was just fun being Yasuke and just wrecking a number of people. But going back to the story, my issue with his main story is that it sort of just falls off. And it's almost overshadowed by something else that I wouldn't argue is that much better, and in some ways doesn't completely make sense. And trust me, he's not the only one that has that issue. Noe is another person that has the same issue. There is a story leading into her that I think is actually really interesting about Nobunaga and other lords of that time expanding, colonizing, and ultimately just conquering most of that land and how they treat the people and what the people's responses were. And Noe was sort of like a beacon of light of revenge to a lot of these commoners and these people who had no other way to fight. And I do think that would have been a great opportunity to show the shinobi in its infancy and early on how a commoner would become this, because they couldn't just stand head to head with a warrior. They had to be stealthy and assassinate, essentially. But they didn't really get into much of that. In fact, the game turned very Assassin's Creed-y without going full Assassin's Creed. And that's my issue with a lot of the Assassin's Creeds. They have a very interesting story when you're starting out and you care about the characters. But as you play, you kind of lose track of where you started and what the whole main goal is now. And it always has to do with this bigger storyline that they also have never really tied in. And if they have, you have to do a ton of research, watch 18 documentaries and follow games from here or there, watch a movie, a series, whatever, and then maybe it'll somewhat make sense when you squint your eyes, but ultimately it just doesn't really add up. And Assassin's Creed has been getting this way for a very long time, and I think even fans of the series would agree that the story itself is so hard to keep track of and follow. Sometimes they're really big into the Animus thing and the future and what they're unlocking and everything, and then other times they just almost completely omit it. If you played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, they almost didn't talk about it at all until the end or in that area. There's just so many different aspects of Assassin's Creed that I don't know. I'm honestly getting to the point where I'm just tired of playing the games. And I really did used to enjoy the series, but it has so much to do with the story. That is my biggest issue. Actual gameplay hasn't really changed that much, and it doesn't need to. Even the bloat, to an extent, I can sort of excuse because there's just a lot of side quests and there's a lot of other things to do. But it's the story and its ability to stay on track, and for me to actually give a damn after a while. You can introduce a bunch of different characters and how they interact with the story, but after a while, it gets to be so hard to remember what you're actually trying to pay attention to. And they usually want you to spend more time focusing on that bigger picture, that bigger Assassin's Creed story. But if you're asking me, I think that's the less tangible story, and the one that they don't give you very much to read on, just these little glimpses here and there. And again, I guess if you just like dug down and did a bunch of research, then you could be caught up, but I don't even feel like the game is worth it to spend that much time doing that much research. I mean, I play the games. Like, isn't that enough? And these games themselves are incredibly long, and there's a ton to do with them. And part of my other issue when it comes to story, and I know I've been spending a lot of time talking about the story, but it's really important, I think, with Assassin's Creed because it has so many good storylines, but they just tend to fall off. A good example of this is really early on when you're playing as Noe and you're trying to get invited to this like tea party, and they make this big thing about it. It's a big ceremony. I shouldn't have called it a tea party. That sounds really pandering. But no, it's like this big ceremony that is incredibly important, and only the elite show up, and it's a good way to network, and it's a good way to find out who you're tracking. And so they build it up about how you need the proper attire, you need to learn the ways of this tea ceremony and bring a proper gift. It's a huge part of the game early on. By the time you actually get to the actual tea ceremony, though, it's like nothing. It's just like a few quick interactions. You barely do anything that of any importance, and it's over. And honestly, that's my biggest problem with the game. I think this is a perfect like microcosm of how the game plays out, where you do have this really important task ahead of you, but it just gets lost and muddled and even loses its steam when you're actually following through with the task. And this happens in so many different ways. That tea ceremony thing was actually not as egregious as some of the other things that you come across and some of the other tasks. But I will lay off the story now, but I did want to say, like, probably my biggest complaint is the story. Everything else is fine. I really have very little issues. And it's not even that the story is bad. I just don't feel like they bring it home. I want to be clear on that because I know there's a number of people who are dogging it because Noe is a girl and Yusuke is black, and that's the big issue. But no, that actually has very little to do with my issue with the game. It's just like Assassin's Creed story writing for, I don't know, like the last decade. It just all kind of comes down to the same thing. And that is, hey, how much more crap can we put into this game? How many more quests can we add to really blow out the game? And I don't know, it loses its luster after a while. To the point where you have very specific enemies who you're targeting. They're supposed to be notable, but ultimately they just turn up to be a name on a checklist. And so much of the game is like that, and it has been that way for a very long time. Now, as far as like everything else, let's just get to the graphics. This game is incredibly beautiful. Honestly, I don't know if there's ever been an Assassin's Creed game that didn't have amazing graphics. They all look really good, and this one stays true to that. In fact, even improves upon many things. The weather changes and stuff like that are really cool, as well as just all the fauna, the animals, being able to interact with people, and even seeing like the NPCs living their life out there. Like, it's crazy. You'd be running around like a bank or something, and you'll see a boat, and there's just like an NPC floating down on his boat, doing something else, fishing. You'll see fights across the way. Like, it's really cool. It feels like a very well lived in world, and that's fantastic. I love that. The actual battle mechanics and combat and all of that, also really fun. I love how, like, Noe does have this, like, stealth ability down to the point where she can literally hide in shadows, which is a really cool new mechanic. Also, her ability to go prone, which is something I didn't know I needed in Assassin's Creed until this one. It seems very simple and something that a lot of games have in it, but it really comes through clutch in this game. It really also helps with, again, the shadow walking, if you will, and staying out of enemy sight. The one complaint I have on Noe, though, is the same one I've had on many Assassin's Creed games, and that is you will come to some enemies that you have the jump on, and you have that assassin command that is ready to go. You hit it, and then it doesn't fully kill the enemy. you are immediately at a disadvantage at this point. Like if you're Noe, because she cannot fight head to head with most warriors. Like that's just not how she does things. You do have other opportunities to use tools and stuff like that to get yourself in a better situation, or just using your speed, which is what you're going to have to do. A lot of defending and parrying and things like that will be the thing that gets her out of those situations. But I guess I'm just annoyed because it's like, okay, there's many times where you're only going to get one kill in anyway. And part of that trade-off is you're going to jump into a horde of enemies essentially to assassinate one of them. But you're going to have to fight the other ones off and get away. Like, that's just part of it. But when you don't even get that one kill, it really puts her at a massive disadvantage. And it's the same issue for a lot of Assassin's Creed games, honestly. They've been doing it for a while where they want to really lean into being an assassin, yet I think even they can tell that at times that's a broken mechanic. And where I play the game as, hey, this is my payoff for being incredibly stealthy and getting through this huge base camp without being seen, is to have this one-shot kill on the enemy I'm targeting. They probably see it as a way to just fly through the game quicker, without realizing how long it takes to get through a camp with a ton of enemies left and right. But one of the better things about this one has been Yasuke, as again, it's just fun to just be this absolute unit and just wreck people in some of the most savage ways I've seen in, honestly, I think any Assassin's Creed. This game is brutal at times, especially with Yasuke, as he's just like gutting people, decapitating people, kicking them from part of Japan to the other side of Japan. It's incredibly fun to play as him. And I think and it leans into how he became where he is, because obviously if he wasn't this style of warrior, he would have never earned the place that he has earned. Now, I will say this though, just so you know, it's not like easy mode when you're in Yasuke. You do get jumped by a lot of people. You just feel like you have a better fighting chance against a ton of these individuals who, like with Noe, you get killed so many times if you get caught. If you're surrounded by more than like 2 people, it's usually over for you. And I have in some ways talked about how this game feels like it's throttling you. You know, it's keeping you slowed down. One of the other ways that it does this is by leveling up. So you can earn like master points and you can put them into certain aspects of your character's growth, whether it be, you know, your ability with the sword or with tools or what have you. I mean, really pretty much to upgrade any of your techniques that you use. My issue with this though is at some point, and it's really pretty early on, you can't grow anymore unless you receive knowledge and this wisdom. The only place that you can get that is by finding these tomes that are at different shrines around the area. And this for me was incredibly slow and boring, and it really just, it sucked the life out of a fun experience, because I would be in this mode of just tracking down people, taking over areas, you know, loot hunting, which is one of the better parts of this game and Assassin's Creed games in general. And then immediately I'd feel like, oh, I have to stop because I have so many points saved up that I can't use because I haven't found enough tomes. I need to go back to the shrines and search and look around to find these tomes. It is really cumbersome, honestly. And there is a way, I think, that you can sort of incorporate your scouts in this game. If you didn't know, you do get scouts in this game where you can kind of tell them an area to look and they'll give you a better idea of where something is. But usually it's a quest, not exactly a quest item. So I don't know if you can use them. Honestly, I didn't use them that often. It seemed like they were going to be a cool little mechanic in the game, but it just kind of, there again, it got cumbersome to use them. So many of the things about the game just feel like that, like you going at a really high rate, you're having fun, and then slam the brake. And when that happened, it just felt like you're trying to walk through a quicksand or something. It just really slowed up and gummed up the whole process of the game, and you really lose a lot of momentum. I don't know, to me it felt like it happened quite a bit. But ultimately, with everything said, do I recommend Assassin's Creed? If you're a fan of Assassin's Creed in general, and you have been for a while, this game is going to just build upon things that you've already liked about it. And I do think like most people will enjoy the first 15 to 20 hours of the game, and they're going to be really into it and think like, oh, this is awesome. That was my experience. Like, I thought they had really turned a corner. I was ready for this new Assassin's Creed experience, and it was really starting off well. But when you start to hit that 35, maybe even 30 hour mark, it starts to rear its ugly head that, oh no, they're just going back to the same formula that they did for the last few games or the last decade or so. And if you're looking for an Assassin's Creed that's going to change things up, it's not this one, unfortunately, and maybe they will get to that point, but for me, that's not what I experienced. So if I was going to give it a number score, I would give it a 7 out of 10. It's not a bad game in any shape or form. It's just that same Assassin's Creed formula with less story interaction or engagement, if you ask me. But me personally, I'm sort of over that. I'm ready for there to be the next phase of Assassin's Creed. I just haven't seen it yet. Even Mirage, I think, took a good step forward when it came to the storytelling that I just don't think that they continue to grow off of with this one. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Assassin's Creed Shadows. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Have you played this game? Are you interested in it? Are you an Assassin's Creed fan? Did I make you mad? Or are you not an Assassin's Creed? Anything, everything, please, in the comment section down below. Really appreciate it. Take care, everyone. Love y'all. Bye-bye.